Okay, again, summary review 3, number 11. And we've got three terms now. X to the negative 3 halves, x to the negative 1 half, x to the 1 half. And again, what's my least power? Well, this is the smallest. This is to the left on the number line, the farthest to the left. So I'm going to factor that out. And again, just be careful if you follow this. It's not too hard. I did a little side work over here so you can see what was going on. Save a little time, or a little space actually. So I'm going to take out this x to the negative 3 halves. So I've got x to the negative 3 halves minus 3 halves, minus 2x to the negative 1 half minus negative 3 halves, plus x to the 1 half minus negative 3 halves. So this part here is always the same. And if you look over here, I just kind of did little sidebar work over here with your fractions. Negative 3 halves, negative times the negatives plus 3 halves, so that's 0. So this ends up being 0. This ends up being 1. You can see over here. This is positive 3 halves. 3 halves minus 1 half is 2 halves, which is 1. Okay, and this ends up being 1 half plus 3 halves, which is 4 halves, which is 2. So it ends up being that, which is just a trinomial, because that's just 1. So I kind of rewrote it, and I put it in descending power. So this is x squared minus 2x plus 1, all over x to the 3 halves, because we took the negative 3 halves and we put it in the bottom. So that's how we got here. And then this can factor, so we just actually factored it to be this x minus 1 squared. And I think probably in the book that I got this out of, they left it in this order, they factored it. So I had this. Well, these are basically the same. If I wrote this and I took out a negative 1 to write it like this, and I squared the negative 1 to be a positive 1. So these are the same thing. You can square these out and you'll get the same thing. So they're equivalent. So if you recognize that, that's not an issue. So this was the way the answer was that I gave you, so you just had to make those adjustments. Okay? All right, number 12. Now this starts to get a little bit more interesting, because now we have two factors in each term, two common factors. I've got an x minus 5 here and an x minus 5 here. I got an x plus 5 here and an x plus 5 here. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Okay. So if I look at the x minus 5, what's my least power there? Well, I've got negative 1 half and negative 3 halves. Negative 3 halves is more negative, so that's my least power. So I'll take that negative 3 halves out. So that would be x minus 5 to the negative 3 halves. Let me save a little bit here for you. And then the x plus 5, I've got x plus 5 to the negative 1 half and x plus 5 to the positive 1 half. Well, negative 1 half is obviously least, or the smallest, so I'm going to take that out. So there's my least powers. Look at those in green and blue. I hope you can identify that. And then this was the results of all these factoring out. So I'll move this over so you can see it all, I hope. So this is the x minus 5 to the negative 1 half minus negative 3 halves, and this is the x plus 5 to the negative 1 half minus negative 1 half. This is the negative sign here, kind of color-coded that so you can identify where that negative sign is. This is x plus 5 to the 1 half minus negative 1 half, and this is the x minus 5 to the negative 3 halves, and I kind of ran out of room over here, minus negative 3 halves. Okay? So we did enough of these fractions, so you should kind of know how these work. This is positive 3 halves minus 1 half is 2 halves, which is 1. A negative times a negative is positive 1 half, and negative 1 half is 0. Move this down a little bit here so you can see that. And then over here, 1 half plus 1 half is 1. And negative 3 halves plus a negative times a negative is a positive 3 halves. So negative 3 halves plus 3 halves is 0. So this is what we have. So we have x minus 5 times 1 minus x plus 5 times 1. Okay? And then we have these factors in front, which we eventually will move down to the bottom, which I did over here. So I put both these factors in the denominator. This is x minus 5 now becomes the positive 3 halves, and x plus 5 to the positive 1 half. I've got x minus 5 to the 1, and then I got minus. Now this is just 1, so again, this is a binomial, so I have to negate both these terms, negative x and negative 5. Okay, so the x's cancel. Negative 5 and negative 5 is negative 10, and then we bring the minus sign out in front. So this is my negative 10. I just have the negative sign in front of the fraction. And this, the denominator stays the same. Right? So there you go. So that's all, pretty challenging because you have to keep track of everything. And again, the color coding kind of helps me even keep track, so it's not a bad thing to do. But again, as you do these, you'll get faster and faster, and hopefully you'll be a little more confident to skip some of these steps. But right now, be very cautious. Okay, and then number 13. This isn't so bad because we just have one common factor, and that's going to be the x squared plus 1. And again, I've got x squared plus 1 to the negative 1/2, so this is the least power, so this is what I'm going to factor out. X squared plus 1 to the negative 1/2. And again, once you identify that, you write it out, then everything else is pretty mechanical. Just be careful on these double negatives. This is x squared plus 1, and that's going to be my 1/2 there, minus the negative 1/2 that I'm factoring out or subtracting. This is the minus sign here. Okay, and this is going to be 10, and this is going to be x squared plus 1 to the negative 1/2 minus negative 1/2. Okay, and a negative times a negative is a positive, so 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1. So that's x squared plus 1 to the first power. And a negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 1/2 plus 1/2 is 0. So that's going to be your 1. And then again, we can put this negative 1/2 in the denominator, make it positive, so this is going to be x squared plus 1 to the 1/2 power. And then this is x squared plus 1, and this is negative 10 times 1, which is just negative 10. And then 1 negative 10 is negative 9, and that factors, that's a difference of perfect squares, to be x plus 3 times x minus 3, all over this x squared plus 1 to the 1/2 power. Okay? And you could have written this as a radical if you wanted the square root of that, but this is fine. Okay? That makes sense. Pretty interesting problems.